The Czech Republic is said to be the place where a mysterious meteorite landed in the past and created such a strong energy field that the entire territory of the country is literally dotted with mysterious places of various natures. The Czech Republic is associated with a concentration of energetically powerful places capable of healing and frightening, with mysterious castles, numerous sites of mystics and the esoteric, or with frequent occurrences of extraterrestrial activities. When you visit Houska Castle, you will get chills down your spine. You may not sleep for a few nights. You will feel nauseous. Other places are imbued with a pleasant, mysterious energy, like the Šumava Mountains. It can be felt by all who are just a little sensitive. And if you visit Prague, you are in one of the most mysterious cities in the whole world. So let's enter the Czech Republic. And first of all, a place that hasn't been open to the general public for decades. First, we visit the mysterious rocky region where Houska Castle is located. The Czech poet Karel Hynek Mácha wrote to a friend in 1836 that it was at this castle that he traveled through time and found himself in 2006, which was revealed to him by a girl he met in the future. Legend or truth? Castle Houska. There are places where you definitely don't want to be alone. But there's only one place where you have a damn good reason not to be. In the case of Houska Castle, founded in the 13th century, we're talking about a place that is associated with the darkest and scariest of things.
There's a problem with Castle Houska. The border is unknown, the trade route is not known, and the surrounding settlement, nothing is known about that.
Pagans call it darkness. Christians call it hell. And you don't have to be a believer to feel the supernatural power of the place.
That castle is there to keep something from getting into the outside world. Castle Houska has a second name, the hole or the gate to hell, gateway to other worlds.
During the reconstruction of the castle in the 19th century, one of the workers was doing maintenance work when he suddenly heard strange voices coming from the castle chapel. No one was there, and the voices seemed to be coming from the walls. The worker was understandably seized with terror and fled the scene.
Here, in this place where we're standing, the earth should have cracked. The rock should have burst, a crevice so deep they called it the hole, or the gate to hell. And through that opening, apart from the sulphurous smell, beings should have ascended to the light of God. And they were called hell beasts, devils, taking on inhuman form, half animals, half humans. They were called inhumans.
Later, the worker was able to describe his experience. And of voices speaking in a language unknown to him, he remembered the word seraph. Seraph is a celestial being mentioned in the Old Testament. According to Christians, seraphs are of the order of angels surrounding God himself. So is there a battle of good and evil at Houska Castle? Is Houska, as they say, the gateway to hell? Who are the guardians? Angels? Is the devil himself standing against them? According to legend, the builders of the original Gothic castle decided to explore the gorge.
Even before they sealed the hole, they were supposed to lower a prisoner into it. It says he was an arsonist and a murderer, so he agreed to it. But halfway through, he changed his mind and said that the hell below Houska is far worse than the punishment that awaited him. They were supposedly lowering a young man there, but an old man came back up.
People who have stayed at the castle in recent years have experienced hard-to-believe phenomena. For example, they heard the clinking of fireplace tools, or couldn't get through doors that can't be locked. When a suicide attempt was made one night by jumping out of a window, further requests for adventurous sleepovers at the castle were denied. No one wanted to awaken the darkness of depression in visitors. How is it possible that there was always an orange glow on the camera image at different points in the castle, and nowhere else during the entire shoot? How is it possible that in a room with no windows, unknown particles were always flying in different directions? And it's not just the underground that shows its mystery. In the attic, the ravages of time creates a suffering face out of cobwebs. Houska Castle has a really special energy, and we are not the only ones who have noticed strange things at Houska Castle. In the past, the paranormal team has noticed trouble and strange noises.
In 2014, during the research at Houska Castle, we found various abnormalities that mainly affected the equipment. It happened very often. The radios went dead. The camera, which had a fully charged battery, suddenly counted down, 4, 3, 2, 1, and turned off. After one checkup, I felt a burning sensation on my chest, and it blistered, which has never happened to me before. It was Mr. Marish who was in charge of the chapel, and as far as the chapel was concerned, he was supposed to have experienced, and even recorded it on camera, blows to the ground, like someone hitting the ground with a sledgehammer, and that's what it sounded like on the recording. Legend has it that this place is guarded by a figure dressed in black, wearing a black cloak and a black hood, and has no face. She's not evil, she's just guarding.
Houska Castle was built as a Gothic residence on the site of a wooden fortress. We can only assume what took place here in pagan times. It is possible that this peak of the Dubska Hills became a place of rituals and magical initiations in ancient times. Whether we call them mages or witches, their connection to the underworld was intuitive in pagan times. Not much to do with logic. However, when you wield supernatural powers, the temptations tend to be great, especially where dark energies are prevalent in places of power.
Our ancestors were afraid of this hole, or the gate to hell, and decided to seal it. They plugged it when it could not be filled in, and building a chapel over it, like a giant seal. This they entrusted to the archangel Michael, who is the counterbalance to the other side, before he protested against the Almighty. Protesting against the Almighty threatened to bring about the fall of man.
We soon learned that Houska Castle attracted even occult-obsessed Nazis during World War II.
During World War II, the Germans stored occult literature here. They had Jewish Cabal, Masonic books. They did magic here.
It remains a mystery why the dead bodies of Nazis were found outside the castle after the war, when there was never any fighting at the castle. Who killed them? Why did they die? Where were they buried?
Under the wooden floor, they weren't graves. They were just under the floor.
Moreover, historical documents reveal that the castle was supposed to be a breeding place for representatives of the Aryan race.
I'm convinced that here, if we put it in quotes, they wanted to produce those nutters, those berserkers who only hear go, 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 fear nothing and move forward.
The graves were found after the war by children who came for a convalescent stay. Those buried were wearing strange uniforms. If you work with dark energy, sooner or later it will destroy you, kill you. The imprisoned Polish and Russian women were said never to have left the castle. Did they succumb to sacrificial rituals, like the buried Nazis? The Germans said they wanted to decide the war from this castle. There was also a man at the castle who claimed Houska was a location for time teleportation.
This is a man who claimed to be Irish, and to know that Hitler had teleported from here. Work it out for yourself.
The Irishman attended a mystery conference at the castle and convinced the owner that there was a teleportation room. Alexandra Mackenzie, a clinical hypnotherapist, also experienced something unexpected here, thanks to her extraordinary spiritual abilities.
I had an impulse. You must go to Houska Castle. There's a chapel in the castle. There's an entrance to the chapel, and both my husband and I stopped, and it wouldn't let us in. I had a strong feeling that we had to go outside the castle, and suddenly the wind blew, and it blew my hair in my face. At that moment, I entered another dimension, another time.
I think there are two ways to travel through time. One is at the level of technology, but I'm personally hugely inspired by the books of David Bohm, who describes a kind of holographic universe in the sense that by, say, electrochemical stimulation of the brain, you can recall memories from the past or even from the future. One actually perceives perfectly the experience from the past, with all the details, or from the future, as if one were in it right now.
I turned around and I became a priestess.
We found out that at that particular place, at the lookout, pagan ceremonies were held for a rich harvest.
I look down at myself and think, that's strange. I was wearing a white linen dress and a belt, which I then painted on because I saw it in detail. It had flowers embroidered on it. It was tied up.
Whatever we actually observe is, one can call it a kind of hologram, meaning if we observe a hologram of the present moment in exactly the same way, in my opinion, the consciousness can be tuned in the same way to observe a hologram in the past, and yet, moreover, none of us are actually able to distinguish which of the holograms I am observing right now.
And I walked down the hill like a priestess in procession. There were still a few young women there. I came down and I wanted to enter the castle from the side. And that's when it hit me. I thought, oh, maybe they're going to sacrifice me. I saw that the priestess's dress had fallen off her like that, and she was standing there naked.
They entrusted the grain to chaos, and the priestess of the harvest lay down the furrow, and the prince of the harvest on her.
I didn't want to know what was going to happen next. It was interesting to see the inside of the castle, though. Something was obviously going on, some kind of ritual, whether positive or negative, I couldn't say.
Certainly physically, you as a person are not going anywhere. In spirit, yeah. Particles move from the past to the future, and antiparticles move from the future to the past. Yeah, so the arrow of time doesn't really play any role in terms of physics or quantum theory. All processes are actually reversible. Like anything can move towards the future or towards the past.
Then the wind that blew through my hair, the way it made me turn around, made me shift in time to another place, to another person. Whether it was my past life, I don't know, but it was someone else's story.
Einstein's theory of relativity about time travel is admitted by default.
What if centuries ago a place was found in northern Bohemia that had been a portal to enormous energy power since pagan times?
The message was that now is the time when female energy must be reactivated.
Was Houska a place that, with the advent of Christianity, was legitimately interpreted as a gateway to hell? Or even a place where one can travel through time? Were the manifestations of magical and paranormal forces evoked by pagan sorcerers the main and perhaps the only reason for the construction of the Gothic fortress? There are some places that don't scare, but heal instead. Prague is an absolutely unique mystical place in the center of Europe. According to occult tradition, it belongs in the domain of Leo, just like, for example, Greek Delphi or Italian Rome. It is a place that seems to have emerged from a fantasy saga of hidden secrets, angels and demons. The mother of cities, the Golden One, the Centurion, these are its other names. The very name refers to a place where one passes from one dimension to another, a place supposedly chosen by a psychic in ancient times, part of which was built a few centuries later in the model of Jerusalem. Nowhere else do you feel such a thin line between the material and spiritual worlds as in Prague. One of Prague's most amazing secrets is in the Carmelite monastery at Hradčany. It's the mummified figure of a woman. She sits on a wooden chair, and in the Christian world she is known as Marie, the Elector of Jesus. And her story is truly extraordinary.
She was named Mary Elector. Elector means chosen one. And it probably points to the fact that the officials who gave the name must have perceived her as special in some way.
Even in her childhood, Marie was called the Holy Child. Many considered her one of the greatest mystics of her time.
A saint is a person who, during their lifetime, was close to God in some extraordinary way, and people around them somehow perceived that God's holiness, God's goodness, God's beauty, or God's courage was manifested in them.
After the death of her father, to whom she had a very strong attachment, Marie Elector was so shaken that in her deep grief she was able to bring herself to a quite extraordinary state of consciousness. She reportedly heard the voice of God comforting her with the words, "Do not be afraid. From now on, I will be your father."
We knew that Mother Elector was greeted on her arrival in Prague by enthusiastic crowds of Prague citizens who already knew about her and regarded her as a saint.
In the monastic silence, solitude, contemplation and deprivation of the individual senses, she may have been able to connect with God repeatedly. Her spiritual growth was utterly unique.
Before she died, she had her diary burned.
Why she did so, we can only guess.
What has survived are a few letters from confessors or spiritual directors, and these reveal the great depth and intensity of her spiritual life.
On January the 14th, 1663, there was reportedly a big frost, and the mortar froze. Perhaps this is why the masons used boiling water to bury Marie Elector in the tomb cavity. The water flowed not only into the grave, but also into the coffin. No one knew about the use of impregnating and preserving agents in the treatment of the body of the deceased before burial. No mention of mummification was found anywhere. There was a strange glow coming from the tomb, and even strange voices were heard in the monastery. One nun went to the tomb to relieve her headache. It seemed to her that Maria Electa had gained the power of healing after death. Miracles began to happen, and this led to a quite unique decision for that time. 3 years after the burial of Prioress Maria Electa, more precisely on the 14th of January, 1666, the new Mother Superior, Euphrasia of Jesus, gave her consent to open the tomb. Surviving written testimonies confirm that one of the reasons for this unusual decision was the extremely strong smell of violets around Electa's grave, although none grew there. After the 3 nuns had re-excavated the grave and uncovered the lid of the coffin, a shocking revelation was made.
The body was found to be intact, so a medical board was convened. These were the most accomplished physicians of the time, and they confirmed the intactness of the body and described it as miraculous and beyond all power.
The preservation of the body is a proof of holiness, because it's as a result of sins that the body decays. The cases of such preserved bodies are known mainly from the so-called Christian environment. Some Roman martyrs were preserved in this way. It is not entirely about saints or people from church circles. Of course, even the non-decomposing bodies were of a different concern. Fears of vampires and so on. But in this case, it's a higher layer of spirituality, somewhere elevated above that.
Her body was exhumed and examined by experts for 14 years.
It may be that even after death, the person bears signs of divine proximity or a certain divine action, and that the body does not decay and remains preserved.
It is a miracle. It is the same as the case of Saint Cecilia in the Trastevere when it was dug up. What's a miracle anyway, right? It's actually when many causes, physical and otherwise, come together at a single point, in a single sort of node, and suddenly something happens that doesn't normally happen.
The Commission wrote a report, still preserved today, which states only one thing.
In 2003, under the guidance of Dr. Emanuel Vulcek, the body of Marie Electa was further examined, and even then they confirmed in their report that the phenomenon was extremely remarkable and rare.
Electa was a prominent Carmelite nun. She was an intellectual, but she also lived a rich, contemplative life, and that was the reason for the preservation of the body. Little known, for example, that she suffered terrible pain for 30 years. She had severe cirrhosis of the liver and other illnesses. But she, through the power of her faith, was able to somehow rise above her body, above the pain. That she tuned into that inner strength, which she then turned outwards. That's actually how that energy can be transmitted.
Today, Maria Electa's body is mobile at the shoulder, elbow, and knee joints. Maria Electa is sitting in a chair without support. People can still come to admire her well-preserved body and ask the Carmelite for intervention.
We keep in our archives hundreds of testimonies of people who say that they have experienced or are experiencing the help of Mother Electa, whether in health, work, housing, or relationships. I prayed to Mary Electa for help, and the surgery went well. And although my platelet count still wasn't up to normal, it was half of the lower end of normal. I've been taken off medication and just keep going for checkups. It's been over 5 years.
Believers claim that miracles still happen today through her intervention. When you love God, miracles can happen, and Maria Electa is said to have been one who was in close communion with God.
I've always been listened to. Mary Electa asked me to fast and pray. Thank you very much. It will be possible to visit Mother Electa and pray with her in the space that will be created under the church in the crypt. We're planning to build a museum here. If everything goes well, it will be in 2024.
Was Maria Electa a spiritual being with quite extraordinary abilities? It is not only for Marie Electa that a new church will be built in Drasti, near Prague. There is another mystery connected to the Carmelites, which attracts hundreds of thousands of believers every year. The world knows it as Bambino di Praga. The wax statue of the child was donated to the Carmelite Church of Our Lady of Victory by Polixena of Lobkowitz.
So, of course, the story is shrouded in mystery of the unknown. The fact that Jesus began to be portrayed as a child is, I think, connected with the beginning of the second millennium.
There would have been nothing strange about a seemingly ordinary gift of mysterious and unexplained origin from an Orthodox Catholic if the statue of Jesus had not been accompanied by the reputation of something miraculous.
For myself, it's a bit of a mystery how baby Jesus became so famous around the world. You'd think it would be an ordinary statue. I think of it as two things. One, the statue is really artistically valuable. And the second, for these people, at least as I see it, is they experience something that I would describe as a loss of fear of God here. They see God depicted as a little child.
The Bambino di Praga arrived at the temple from Spain, and over the centuries has gained a reputation in many ways similar to that of the French Lourdes, the Portuguese Fatima, or the Bosnian Medjugorje.
We came to thank the baby Jesus for the arrival of our son Sebastian, who was born when we were 41 years old and after we had been told we could no longer have children. Thank you, Jacqueline, Hermes, and Sebastian from Costa Rica.
The baby Jesus is not miraculous itself. Christ actually works through it. It is a kind of door to heaven.
The baby Jesus is something extraordinary. Not like a warrior of God, but a defenseless child is the ultimate power.
Enough people here have experienced such a settlement. Many people come here as childless married couples and ask for the gift of a child. And we have documented many cases where this has been successful.
Thousands of people came to the statue to pray, to ask for a miracle, for a cure, and other benefits.
In May 2012, we came here to pray for the blessing of a child. Our prayers were answered with the birth of our daughter, Anna. She came with us to Prague for the second time to thank the child Jesus for this grace. Anna is our greatest blessing from God. William, Heidi, and Anna Kelly from USA 2019.
People were here to pray, to bow, and then to testify that they'd been healed from some incurable disease when the doctors weren't giving them much of a chance, when it looked hopeless, whatever cancer it was.
Our son Johan had a very serious accident when he was 5 years old, and it was very likely that he would die. It was baby Jesus who saved him. The Ballesteros Castillos family from Paraguay, 2019.
Bambino di Praga was to miraculously heal countless people and save the old town of Prague from the Swedish sack in 1639. But miracles are still happening today thanks to the Bambino di Praga.
Tragically, a ship carrying oil was wrecked off Genoa. There was great concern that the oil would leak and cause a big fire. In the end, the tanker sank without the oil escaping. People considered it an answered prayer to the baby Jesus. And then they built a statue of the baby Jesus on the tanker.
The statue has been copied countless times, and you can find more or less faithful copies of it in all parts of the world.
The dress is seen as an expression of respect for the statue. They started to be collected here from different donors, and that's why they started to be revered.
The infant Jesus has become an important part of the church, and today has over 250 vestments and dresses according to the liturgical feasts.
I like him best when he's not wearing a dress. At Christmas, for example, we leave him without fancy clothes.
Fulfilling the wishes of the faithful, the miracles associated with the infant Jesus were eventually noticed by Pope Benedict XVI, who personally gave him a golden crown, and the baby Jesus has his own personal prayer.
So we can look behind the altar. It's a really beautiful place. For me, it's the most beautiful place in the church. It's where we come together as a community for prayer and meditation. When I pray, I don't say anything, or I don't pray to anything. The contemplation, it is for the inner free space, and that is what I perceive as an encounter with God. It's something liberating.
What's above also has a world underneath. Not everyone knows what mysterious things lie beneath the Church of Our Lady of Victory. Graves and other mummies. These are images unknown to the crowds waiting for a miracle. Prague hides so many secrets. Šumava Mountains. Let's start long ago at the remains of the walls of the so-called Giant's Castle. According to historians, it was probably built by the Celts and was the most important cult site in Bohemia. Once upon a time, a bone nearly 3 meters long was said to have been found here, glowing in the dark. Legend has it that it was not the only one, and that the locals once built a footbridge over the nearby Losenica stream, and even that was said to glow at night. Over time, the giant bones succumbed to the elements and disintegrated. The suggestion that they could be rare dinosaur bones doesn't hold water. But the giants gave rise to the name Giant's Castle. Were these giants actually visitors from outer space? The hill fort protected a sacred place, and archaeologists have not found any shards of vessels or production tools inside the mounds. Nothing of the sort. Nothing to suggest the castle was inhabited by humans. The castle was eventually mysteriously demolished, and judging by the state of the ruins, it was a destructive force. What force? No one ever found out. If this was a guarded place where close encounters of the third kind took place, the question arises, why here?
In the same way that our ancestors built megalithic structures on certain specific points, because that's where the, let's say, extraterrestrial energy emanated from, so maybe aliens are looking for similar places where they can gather energy, maybe to recharge their flying saucers.
Were our pagan ancestors able to tap into unknown cosmic forces? Or was it all due to the presence of gold, radon, and uranium in Šumava? Was the castle then destroyed on purpose? Or did the technology hidden in the castle escape with the alien civilization? Either way, mysterious, tall beings have appeared in Šumava, and we have credible evidence of this. Svatobor. The Svatobor hill rises 845 meters above sea level, over the town of Sušice, the gateway to Šumava.
Just at that time, every year, there was a crop circle there. A pattern here on the Sušice, on the Svatobor, exactly.
More than 20 years ago, Vladimir Onda and his girlfriend lived at the lookout tower. At that time, he worked in the nearby town of Sušice as a professional driver.
There's a military transmitter. There's a TV transmitter in the back. There's a tower. I don't know whether this is an interesting place for them, if it's because of the transmitters. I was walking to work after 5 o'clock in the morning, out the door here. And as I approached the stairs, I had a strange feeling that something was watching me. A strange chill. I walked down to my car, and even there on those steps, I noticed something strange in that corner of the parking lot. I got to the car, and there I could see them. There were two of them standing across from me. They were awfully tall, maybe 2 meters, maybe 3 meters, kind of transparent, weird. I didn't follow them for very long, of course, and I took my feet on my shoulders and ran back and shut myself in the toilet. They had this elongated head, very much like a cone, and had weird big eyes. It was more like they had a helmet on. I don't quite know how to describe it. But the estimate is really towards 3 meters. A being without a suit. They were glowing because they stood out in the dark. That's why I noticed them. If someone was in dark clothes, you wouldn't notice them. At first, I was terribly afraid of the contact, of being picked up, of being taken somewhere. Just afraid. So I ran back to the house and watched from the little window. This is it. Of course, I locked the door, and I was pretty shaky in there. It was like they weren't standing, they were above the ground, they were completely floating. Maybe they were light beings. My friends and I were investigating. There used to be a huge clearing here, so we found prints there. Maybe it's their craft that hit the ground. Then suddenly, they disappeared. It was just like that. It's like being transported back in time. I ventured out to the car about 15 minutes, and the car, which always started 100%, wouldn't start. So I pushed it down the hill and drove down to Odelenka. That's the village under the lookout tower. I kept trying to start it, despite the gear shift, and only there did the car start. Incomprehensible. The car actually started on the first try, every time. I didn't tell my girlfriend until 5 days later. I needed to talk about it. I didn't want to bottle it up. Half the people believe you, half think you're crazy. Then the tabloid journalists came along, and I didn't do any interviews with them. I didn't want to, even when they offered money. I didn't want to be in the middle of the media like that. There's a camp just up the road from here, above Odelenka, and a lady had an experience there. She also saw some UFOs.
There is a scout camp near the tower. In July 1996, one of the leaders experienced a morning she would hardly forget. While the camp was asleep, she saw from her tent 3 extremely tall, transparent, yet clear in outline figures at the camp boundary. She did not even dare to leave the hut. She just studied the figures, who supposedly had no discernible destination. Were they the same creatures that visited the nearby Giant's Causeway centuries ago? However, there are many more testimonies of people living in Šumava or in Poshumavi. And there were and are more anomalous phenomena that are associated with UFOs. For example, sightings of unexplained phenomena and movement of objects in the sky, and also the formation of crop circles. One of them was discovered by a local resident.
We didn't find out until we were on our way to work. I don't think it would have been visible otherwise. From this driveway, it was beautiful. You could see that the circles had curved straws in a way that you couldn't normally do. And when we went to look even closer, it looked like something had actually landed there.
We found that they contain geometry, for example, or there's a form of astronomy, mathematics, and there's some kind of message that those who create them are trying to communicate with us. Examples of this are the circles in Chilbolton or in Crabwood, which are very specific, and they are actually encoded using binary code.
Then people became interested in it. They went there, but at first, when we first saw it, there was no sign of a person walking through there and doing it. I wasn't very interested in it, but I heard that there was something similar in the village of Žihopce, and that something was happening in Svatobor.
Something even more amazing was witnessed by an environmental expert.
I was cycling from down the road for about 3 hours at night, mid-July. So quiet in nature, nice quiet. I came to a lime tree and I thought, wow, this calm is different. A strange, tense calm. I was looking at what was going on. It was dark, so I couldn't see the object, but it looked like a bracelet and had made up of windows or plates, and the red lights in the plates were gradually going on and off. I'd have to say I felt tense, so I got on my bike and I rode home. I got under the covers and I thought, oh, good, the devil knows what it was, but it was weird. And 2 days later, the media reported that in Sušice region, near the village of Žihopce, there was a distinctive crop circle of unknown origin. So there is a large gold deposit in Šumava, the Houska Mountains. It's in the bedrock. There is a radon area. There are elements of the radon series, so that could probably be the reason. There are also interesting energy sites there. Godstones, Umožanec, by Anim. There are a lot of energy sites here. That's probably why.
Perhaps the Šumava region attracts UFOs directly. Everyone here has a story. A former aircraft mechanic also saw the UFO and courageously used his mobile phone.
I've got a seat over there in that corner. I'm sitting here and I see these beautiful blocks of ice rotating over this little valley. They're going round and round. So I thought, I've got to take a picture of that. So I took a picture on my mobile phone so people would believe me. And when I got home, it was gone.
They're talking about what's called mission-controlled technology. It's like a two-way street. And that it's something that aliens have long since mastered. And that it seems to me that aliens have technology that can erase photos from cell phones and cameras.
Huge 30-meter blocks that were rotating, about 6 of them. They were going round and round like that, beautifully regular, 30 meters at least.
I was very surprised that something like that appeared, and I personally know that most of the objects are cigar or disc-shaped.
There, as it's a valley, it was exactly at the summit. It was 9:30 at night. All of a sudden, it disappeared. And naturally, I was afraid to go home afterwards. I was still looking at my cell phone, looking at it, so people would believe it wasn't crazy. When I got home to show the guys, the pictures were gone.
The greater appearance of aliens in the early evening or early morning could be explained by a change in the frequency of the Earth on the surface of the planet Earth.
And there was this weird silence. Naturally, I was shaking, and it was like the ground was shaking, like an earthquake. Nobody believed me.
František Pavlovec from Škudra almost got into a personal conflict with an alien civilization. But at the moment of the clash, his weapon itself shattered, and the flint stopped working.
I was shooting at wild pigs. This is the neighbor's field. And then a flying saucer came and landed right in the middle of this field, between 2 villages. And this is where the saucer landed. I took my rifle, I leaned it against the pine tree, and I looked at them. I wanted to see them up close. I was looking through the scope and I thought, what if I take one alive? I just wanted to be a hero, to have that proof, like the first man. I couldn't do it anyway, because I thought, I'll just alarm them, pick up my rifle, shoot in the air, and then I'll get that one. Maybe I'll hit it with the butt of my gun. But the rifle stopped working, so I ran away, through the woods, home. I climbed into bed and got so sweaty I had to change. 2 hours later I thought, was it real or not? And then I came to a gunsmith in the city who looked at my rifle and said, what have you done with that rifle? It was all fused together inside. I couldn't even break it open to take out the cartridges. It was all completely baked, and I was paralyzed, and that's when I got afraid.
There have been described cases where soldiers have attacked alien craft, but usually it has ended in one of 2 scenarios. Either the missile turned on them, or the missile was essentially absorbed.
When they got off the ship, one of the guys saw me, because I had him in my sights. I also wondered why they were here, if it's because of the radon that's here, if they were charging the plate. So they came out and looked around, or if they were here to see the ancestors. The old Celts were here. There's a reference to 16 huts. I came back the next day and I saw tracks as I ran, broken branches. The grass was just a little bare from the base plate, just like the body sat on the grass. I got a feeling of hopelessness, a fear that I'd never had before, that it was hopeless and that I didn't stand a chance against this force.
And UFOs were recently seen in Šumava at close range by a whole group of witnesses, including a man who has long been interested in extraterrestrial civilizations and has made programs about them.
I'm currently 2 years into a series called Top Secret UFO Projects, Declassified, which we have produced for Sky History and Netflix, where we mapped the world UFO scene. What I've learned about UFOs, about labs, about alien civilizations, about reverse engineering, has reinforced to me that there are object craft that we can't explain. They're out there, and they're really unidentifiable. Šumava is a very magical place, and at that time, there were about 12 of us walking here. And there was a herd of cows near this place. Nobody understood why there were 100 cows packed in here from all over the meadow, looking in this direction. I couldn't think of anything else, because things come to you intuitively, that if there were cows packed in here like this, there must be a UFO somewhere. I turned in that direction, and there was a black graphite diamond hanging about 6 feet in the air. Then it slowly rose up, hovered, and then disappeared over the horizon. It's a very interesting shape. It reminded us of the Cash Landrum case from the United States, where the exact same object was described. These objects described all over the world have different shapes: triangular, rectangular, cigar shapes. It seems that the anti-gravity propulsion that these craft have may not be consistent with aerodynamics. And these craft move instantaneously from place to place at any speed. There were people here who didn't believe such a thing could exist. We speculated about whether it was possible, that it was a drone or whatever. But we who saw it are convinced that it was of extraterrestrial origin. Of course, when you see a UFO, you don't see it every day. But when you see it, fully conscious, as a concrete reality, it was Saturday afternoon, the sun was shining, it was a beautiful day. And when you were about 12 people, you have no doubt that you saw an object that does not belong to our ordinary world. The strange thing was that we had no fear. We had no emotion. None of us reached for our mobile phones because we were all in shock at what we were seeing. The feeling was very pleasant and calm. And then, when I asked the others how they felt about it, they said, "We saw a UFO. We know that UFOs exist." It should be remembered that such a frequent occurrence of UFOs here in the Bohemian forest is only proof that extraterrestrial civilizations are interested in our planet.
Apparently, they want to save our amazingly diverse flora and fauna, our incredibly diverse world. They're interested in our unique DNA, full of emotion and experience, and water as a source of life. They are shutting down our nuclear weapons, guarding our nuclear power plants, worried that we are capable of destroying our wonderful planet. What else does a country in the middle of Europe hold? We will certainly return to Bohemia.